Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Antoni Cimolino, the Artistic Director of the Stratford Festival, and welcome to the watch party for the 2018 Stratford Festival production of Coriolanus, directed by Robert Lepage and starring André Sills. Now, we're very fortunate tonight because in leading up to this watch party, we have both of them here with us.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
There you are. There was a moment I thought, oh no, they're not appearing. So this is one of 12 films that we're screening, and this production of Coriolanus was an enormous hit. Robert is an internationally renowned playwright, director, actor, and he put together this production over the course of really a couple of years in a series of different workshops. André is not only a leading player at the Stratford Festival, but also at the Shaw and in many other theaters. So it is going to be such a pleasure to see your work tonight and to speak to you now, both of you.
Thank you.
So, well, let's begin. Robert, 2015, we had a conversation about Coriolanus, and you raised it as a play that you were very interested in. And the play is, for those who don't know the Shakespeare's play, about a leader, actually I shouldn't say leader, a strong military man who is being enlisted to be a leader, and he's not a good one. He doesn't really want to have any empathy for others. He's what some people might call a strong individual contributor as opposed to a leader. So before we get into Coriolanus himself, Robert, what drew you to direct this play again? You had done it 25 years ago. What drew you to Coriolanus today?
Well, a lot of ideas of the production of 25 years ago were very incomplete because it was at a time where maybe the social context didn't necessarily lend itself to stage Coriolanus. And but of course, when we decided to do it with Stratford, if we had just come out of this 1% riot events that were happening in the U.S., and then the whole social context started to warm up, and there was all these things, and also the place of social media now that plays such an important part in our social decisions and in the conversation. So for me, I did a bit of research and discovered that a lot of the social media tricks and lingos and gadgets are all connected to the early Roman democratic ways of communication. So in the early days in Rome, not only did we have elect tribunes to speak, but we would also communicate through all these new devices and these new things that gave way to the social media that we have today. It's the same terms like, on Facebook, the whole thumbs up, thumbs down thing, which is of course a Roman thing that eat the Christians, don't eat the Christians things, and the whole idea of the forum, the idea of the wall, and there was a lot of things that a lot of terms that the internet started to use that referred directly to that period in Rome. So I thought, okay, maybe this is a good time to explore that and to see how we could use the same vocabulary in a certain way, but try to apply it to the situation today.
So this idea of graffiti, wax tablets, that was a precursor to our modern forms of communication, was there throughout the piece. Communication is really critical to Coriolanus. It's one of those Shakespeare plays that has very long lines, like 11, 12, 13 beats, where normally in a play like Romeo and Juliet, there's only 10, right? Yeah. André, there's invective in it, there's name calling, and a rush to define your enemy. And as a matter of fact, because you begin the play as Caius Marcius and eventually become Coriolanus, the play is on some level about defining your enemy or your friend by a name. How would you define Coriolanus? What kind of person is he, a hero or a villain?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, the one thing I about that whole play in general is like, who is a hero and who is a villain?
Right.
Like, I find this play truly human in regards to, if you really look at each person, you can't really find a hero or a villain. And Coriolanus is a guy in the middle of it who has some principles that he's going to stand by, and he's not going to waver by them. So I don't know if I can place him as a hero or a villain. A little bit of an anti-hero, but a man who really stands by his beliefs, no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Robert and André, this play often has been used by directors and actors to create, a kind of sense that the right wing are on the right side or the left wing are on the right side. But as you say, André, the motives are quite mixed up. It feels like Shakespeare will tolerate all sorts of extremists, but no moderate people. Mm-hmm. In this case, your character both saves Rome and wants to destroy Rome.
Yeah.
Why the flip?
Well, I guess it's all to do with the amount, like from the age of 16 was when I think Cominius talks about his first battle and all he's done. And from the age of 16 to the age that he is now, of all the scars and scars he has on his body from every battle, I think he feels like Rome owes him. Hmm. Like, I feel like he's carried Rome on his shoulders to this point. And then for him to get banished, I think kind of blows his mind a bit. He's just like, you're going to banish me? You know what? Screw you guys. I'm coming back for you.
Like in a lot of Shakespeare plays, he's a character he's a hero who's caught between two epochs, right? He has all the values that he's been brought up in with a certain way of seeing society, and suddenly there are new rules, society evolves, people have spokespersons who are elected to speak in their name, all that, and he's caught in the middle. And very often it's the Brave New World syndrome in certain ways. That is, Shakespeare often depicts a world that's in a certain state, and suddenly time changes that, and there's people who react to that. So that's why, for me as a director, I never saw Coriolanus as a far right or far left character. I was never about that. It's about somebody who was faithful to his beliefs, to how he was to a tradition, and he's a real hero in that sense. But then he's confronted to new rules and a new definition of what power is and all that. And suddenly he's kind of caught in a sandwich between that. Yeah. So and there's a lot of that, and we're like that. I'm like that, there's all these new directors and these new rules in theater and all these new things, and I always go, no. I'm trying to be faithful to a certain tradition. I've been, so we're all kind of anti-heroes in a certain way, and I think that's what's so moving and so intriguing about the character and how people relate to him, even though he's quite a number.
André, when you talked about his free will, I mean, he has that line about as if a man were the author of himself, and knew no other. So but you make a good point about the fact that he doesn't ultimately take leadership. Even when he gets banished, he doesn't step up to give direction. He always is the fighting machine on his own. It's sort of connected, I think, with his being called a boy. So there is something about that where he's just not quite a man. Certainly, how did you and Robert navigate that special relationship that he has with his mother?
Well, I can give one example, André, is that if you remember, there's that very tricky scene where they're in the living room. We call it the living room scene, of course.
Right.
And when the mother tries to tell them you have to go back to the marketplace and you have to speak to them and you have to, and you have to basically contradict who you are. And so it was interesting because that for me was the most important scene. So we could see the character who's, this big tough guy, this big kind of mature, but he's actually a child. He's a kid, and he's just sitting there, all kind of slouching in the sofa, and that was an interesting thing to play around with. I remember, André, when the first times that we tried it, and how to find so that of course you get a laugh because people relate to the kid. But that's the thing, is that you've managed to make a character that's kind of this oversized character, but there's actually a very, very tiny, fragile little boy who depends on you. And how do you do that in a creative, realistic way, and at the same time that people identify to it, so that actually, and we would get good laughs for that. It's probably a very pivotal dramaturgical plot point.
It helped that André is such a big person, because the military killing machine. That's. Were you conscious of those boyish elements in him?
Well, I think it was always interesting trying to find what the relationship was between mom and son, and like having Lucy Peacock as mom, and also having her there as a mentor at the same time was nice. But one day I remember doing that exact same scene, and Lucy was like, "André, can I hit you?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And she's like, and it's like, "You can hit me. It's okay. I can take it." So like the moment of the two of them battling together in that, like going against each other, and mom, still smaller than her son, being able to like, "You are still my son, and I am going to like lay the smackdown on him to put him back in his place." And I think that was a real moment where you get to see the child again, and then also have the fear of, is she going to hit me again? It was an interesting moment to just kind of see that dynamic between the two of them. And people also wonder about Virgilia. Why is she there? Why is she there? What's the point of her? But in my mind, Virgilia is Coriolanus's one act of free will. He chose his wife because it wasn't some overspoken person like his mother is. It's a nice, quiet human being. I mean, what would his life be like if he had two overpowering women in his life? It might be too much. So I think the time that he has with his wife is his escape from the political world, from mom, who's always trying to advance his career, to being at home with his family when he's not on the battlefield, So it's a nice sort of dynamic between the two of them, of mom being the force of nature coming at him to advance the name of the family, and to have the opposite as his wife. Because I think mom would have probably chose somebody else if she could have.
Yeah, probably.
Your mother and love, and that's so interesting what you said about his choosing his wife. So often these plays are about finding love, and I guess when he decides not to destroy Rome, and he's pleaded to by his mother, his child, his wife, and her friend, he relents. Was Volumnia, Robert and André, the idea of Volumnia, honor and valor, her love of that warrior code that she once instilled in her son. What kind of discussions did you two have with Lucy about the kind of mother she was, and her role in creating this tragedy?
Yeah. Well, I know that what's interesting is that that monologue towards the end, when she comes and convinces Coriolanus not to run over Rome, is an extraordinary piece of writing, because it's not one thing. It's like 7 different mothers speaking at different moments of being a mother. She's loving, then she's patronizing, and then she's a dictator. And it's extremely well written. So it gives you that. So she's the universal mother at a time where women, of course, did not have the power, but they had this inner power, where, of course, they were controlling a lot from behind the scene, and so she was. It was a great, when that moment comes, when the 3 women come to Coriolanus' tent and please do not come over Rome. Is that you get a demonstration of all of the different blackmail tools that a mother has, so she tries absolutely everything in the book, and it gives you kind of a sense of who the character is. It's a great it's a great scene to understand what the character's made of. So that's easy when you start the whole play again. And for Lucy, it made it much clearer to what level she manipulates, and the idea is always to maintain the power, to always have a sense of power, even if it doesn't look like you have the power, even though there's a democracy now, there's people who have their opinions and they have their representatives, that you still, there's a way of playing it. So that I think was very revealing when we started to hack at that last scene, that long monologue when she tries to convince. And it was an extraordinary thing to do also with you, André, because how you react to it was as important. So it is a dialogue, you know, it's a monologue, but it's not a solo piece, that moment. It's really how you react, what exact argument touches what in him, and where does the pivot, when does he turn away? I mean, it's so clearly well structured and written, so it asks as much from the actor who plays Coriolanus than from the actress who plays Volumnia.
And child rearing is critical in this play. I mean, Coriolanus has a son who is chewing on butterflies, we hear in the text, and you know, so what does a mother do? How Rome in some way is a stern mother, and we see the replication of this military code. I want to talk about that just for a second. We talked about the military man who was also a child. When the military man goes over to the other side and is banished, André, as you said, he puts himself under Ophidius, who in some ways is kind of like a dark mirror image of Coriolanus. Coriolanus is a lion. It's like Ophidius is the wolf. Tell me about that. There's a very homoerotic element in that, and I don't know if that was deliberately explored. It came out, and finally, in this long series of questions, the idea of Ophidius having a same-sex partner in the play was really interesting, Robert. Talk about any of that.
Trying to figure out where to start with that one. Yeah, it was interesting to kind of like have these two titans of men who have fought against each other numerous times. And then the ballsy act of showing up to his house and say, join with me, let's tear Rome apart. And, you know, the closeness of how, like, hate and love, tears and laughter are together. The emotion that must have come out of Ophidius, and like, and also are those two guys also on the same page throughout the whole thing? I think Coriolanus has one sort of intent. Ophidius has another sort of an intent. I think these guys have a great admiration for each other as enemies. And then the possibility of the two of them forming an alliance together, just that an enormous amount of hate that they've expressed for each other, to have this moment of supreme intimacy of Coriolanus showing him his entire soul of where he is and what he's gone through to get here, and now I'm here under your command. You know, trying to understand what a person must feel, like your own enemy, trying to understand what your own enemy would think of you in that moment. And then to have him embrace you is an incredible reaction.
The whole homoerotic thing has always been kind of there in the play, and every director tries to deal with it, and you have to make a choice at one point. What I found interesting about including that or underlining it in the character of Ophidius, who has a lover, is that I remember reading a thing that Jean Cocteau once wrote about saying, if you look at a film at two wrestlers, who fight. And it says, and if you slow it down, you have the illusion that they're making love. So the difference between love and hate is a question of speed, right? And intensity. So that's the thing about this weird relationship between Ophidius and Coriolanus, whether it's a homoerotic one or not, and on whose part, it doesn't really matter. It's a question of it's there. When you're constantly obsessed by wanting to fight somebody and confront somebody, and there's something there that's there's a very fine line with this. You have an obsession, and the obsession is not just hate.
Right.
It is admiration, as you say, André, and it's something that goes beyond that. So for me, it was very important that there would be a moment in the piece where they do grapple and they do this kind of wrestlers thing, where that's what guys do to show their affection. They slap each other and they touch. It's kind of if you put it on slow-mo, they're actually
caressing each other's faces.
Yeah. So that was for me the whole thing, and I mean, there is something that was very ambiguous in Shakespeare's personifications, of certain characters, and I mean, even the sonnets and all that. There's all this kind of interesting undefined gender thing sometimes that you can't just omit it and say, oh, well, it's not part. It's always there, and it's as it is in society, as it is in every walk of life. So it was important to put it there, but not to underline it, and not to make it like a big statement.
Robert, in trying to find a visual language for this stunning production that you put together, I know you had a series of workshops. You had some initial thoughts about the role of technology, as you had said, communication, and we can see the communication devices, the radio, the texting that takes place, the cameras that actually capture the action, and there's a lot of beautiful use of technology in how you staged it all. Could you just take us through how you initially thought about the play, and then how you settled on that focus, the strong focus that it has?
Yeah, well, the thing is that in the theater, there's always this kind of broad thing that we do on stage, and certainly in big productions, big epic productions, there's a lot of characters. The audience is free, and he has a choice. So you could decide that you're not necessarily looking at the main character, you're looking at somebody that you find interesting in the corner or whatever. So there's a kind of a freedom when you go to the theater. Without wanting to deprive the audience from that freedom of choice, what he looks like and who he listens to, the fact that I was framing stuff all the time kind of helped me control what people understood and what they looked at. So, so I had to do it in a very crass way, which was these. So sometimes what's interesting is that I would borrow from the filmic vocabulary, because audiences today are very, very savvy with filming. People are being told stories through film and through videos and through television a lot. So they know about that language, even though they cannot actually name every technique, but they know what that vocabulary is. So, and they feel very clever when they say, oh, this is like a two-shot, or this is like a fast forward, or this is like, so they feel, so I tried to control the audience, what they look and what they understand, what they look at, in a very playful way. So we would often have reactions in the room going, they're doing like in film. There'd be a lot of that going on. So it was a very playful process where people felt intelligent. There's not a better feeling when you go to a show and you feel, oh, I got it. Oh, I understand. Oh, I'm in on it, So that's part of the playfulness. So even though it's serious subject matter, it's a tragedy, whatever's on stage, there has to be a sense of playfulness, and the audience likes to be brought into that. So people feel that even though it's very hyper realistic the way we show things, that there's a lot of craft behind it, and we're letting them in onto our vocabulary that we've chosen. So
in some sense, the theater is like a puzzle that people solve as it unfolds.
Yeah. The best reaction to the theater is always when you feel kind of a rumor in the room that people go, oh, I get it. That's why people go to the theater, to feel intelligent, but of course if they're there and they don't understand what's going on. So not that you have to over explain things, you have to bring the material, you have to bring the enigma, the puzzle, and say, well, this is what we're playing with, and we don't have all the answers. We need the audience to help us put the things together.
Well, one thing I found with that is with each location that we placed each scene in, like starting off the top with the radio station, you show the picture of that and people are like, oh, I know what that is. I understand the rules, and I understand the rules of what the radio station is. And then it allows you to just kind of listen. Same thing with the restaurant that happens later on. Everybody understands the rules of what a restaurant is. You eat quietly, you don't speak too loud. And then if somebody goes against that, then it's something different, right? So I think it gave people the opportunity to kind of sit back and just watch the show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, none of us remember what it's like to be in a restaurant anymore. André, one last question, because we're coming up to the watch party screening time. For both of you, why does Coriolanus matter today?
Okay.
You want to dive in first, André?
Robert, why don't you start off with this one?
Okay. No, I think that as we spoke about earlier in this conversation, is that he's is an extraordinary character that is a transition. He's in a transition. You know how in the situation we're in right now with the pandemic and all that, we know that the world in which we're going to come back to will probably not be the same. Of course, it'll smell the same, it'll look the same and all that, but you know, we will be changed people, and it's the people who resist that who will be the Coriolanuses, in the sense that whatever your good intentions are, however heroic you will, if you don't thaw to the new reality that's coming, then you will be confronted a lot. So that's, for me, the most interesting about the character of Coriolanus is that he's somebody who's been brought up in a certain reality and who's faithful to that, and that faith becomes blind to the point that he cannot assume the new reality, because, you know, life and society and everything evolves so quickly, and we have to adapt. So we probably will have to adapt in hopefully a few months, not a few years, to this new reality, with new rules.
Beautiful, thank you. And André, thoughts?
I guess for me, it was, centered off this guy who made his living off of adrenaline, and being able to navigate the adrenaline, and his job was to destroy people. And, you know, and then you want that guy to come and be in government. And where does he navigate in the world of adrenaline? And, you know, and it's same with a lot of these plays, with a lot of these warriors, is that they don't know how to take the warrior that is well and accepted on the battlefield and bring him home. Or people ask these guys to bring that energy home where it's not supposed to be. But, like, you know, and it's the same thing with after you watch a sporting event, you put a microphone in somebody's face right after they've spent an hour and a half tearing people apart, and you're not happy with how they speak. You know, it's the wrong time sometimes to put a microphone in somebody's face. And I find Coriolanus is very similar to that. And I think he has a hard time navigating the world in general, because I think in his mind, he's only suited for the battlefield.
Well, you've touched on the theme of the first three films that we're screening. We screened King Lear last week, a warrior who doesn't make for a good king. Tonight, Coriolanus. And in 1 week, Macbeth, who also is the conflict between the values of a battlefield and the kind of leadership that's needed in a civil society is head to head. Like, and we're seeing it right now. The leaders who have some degree of empathy for others are the ones that are succeeding.
Exactly.
Both of you had great empathy for this play. I want to thank you both for the work that you did at Stratford in 2018, which fortunately we have recorded, and also for being with us tonight. Robert, André, merci. Thank you.
Thank you, Antoni.
À bientôt.